Well, I'll certainly never look at the Brotherhood of Steel the same way again. If you know, you know. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back today to talk some classic sci-fi as we're dipping into 1959's A Canticle for Leibowitz. Now, first, before I begin, guys, I want to say thank you to the Folio Society who sent me this absolutely incredible edition of said A Canticle for Leibowitz. This is amazing stuff, guys. If you need me to tell you why Folio Society is awesome, all I really need to do is show you this incredible edition of this story. And yeah, check out their website. I'm going to put the link down below if you guys want to, because I read from this absolutely beautiful edition, and I felt like it did enhance the experience quite a bit. Very, very happy with it. So again, thank you to Folio Society for sending this to me. And I thought it'd be a perfect time for me to go ahead and pick it up, and I felt like I should review it because this is a book that I feel like everyone has been telling me to read ever since I did my post-apocalyptic and dystopian favorite books of all time. One of the biggest comments I got in there was, what about A Canticle for Leibowitz? Well, I said, hey, now is the perfect time to go ahead and talk about this because that is a little subgenre I think all of us do have some love for in one way or another. As messed up and morbid and horrible to think about as it is something I think just kind of dwells inside of all of us. So I was very excited to pick this one up. So I had Christopher Rocchio over here recently, and he actually just was going on about how it was one of the greatest books ever. And I am happy to say I did enjoy the book. I'm going to kind of talk about why now. So obviously this is released in 1959. This was a collection of 3 short stories that were published in the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. You know that one we all just cherish. It's considered an all-time classic, and I think it's been never ever been taken out of print. That's really remarkable, and it won the Hugo Award in 1961 for Best Sci-Fi Novel. So this one has quite the legacy, but did it live up to it? Well, we're going to talk about today, guys. We're going to begin like usual. I talk about what is the book about. Well, in a nightmarish, ruined world slowly awakening to the light after sleeping in darkness, the infant rediscoveries of science are secretly nourished by cloistered monks dedicated to the study and preservation of relics and writings of the blessed Saint Isaac Leibowitz. In the depths of the Utah desert, long after the flame deluge has scoured the earth clean, a monk of the order has made a miraculous discovery: holy relics from the life of the great saint himself, including the blessed blueprint, the sacred shopping list, and the hallowed shrine of the fallout shelter. In a terrifying age of darkness and decay, these artifacts could be the keys to mankind's salvation. But as the mystery at the core of this groundbreaking discovery unfolds, it is the search itself for meaning, for truth, for love, that offers hope for humanity's rebirth from the ashes. Guys, it takes us all the way back to 1959. This is A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter Miller Jr. Let's begin, like always, guys, I talk about what makes it good. Now, for me, I think this just shows a depiction of a hopeless, apocalyptic wasteland just perfectly. I feel like setting it in the desert, the Utah desert, is a great start. To me, it's just like everything I feel like we envision of a wasteland always just kind of feels like that. And he sets the tone with it here really early. You feel like you get to know what life is like here all these years after the bombs dropped, and it is very visceral, is very real, and is very unforgiving. Obviously, you got mutated beasts, you got the way the humans are going to, the survivors that were, exposed to the radiation, the fallout, are going to be changed, and just kind of the way that everything is just very dog eat dog in this world, as there is no more civilization. But I feel like it is a clear inspiration for a lot of things. I talked about the Brotherhood of Steel. Now, Fallout is a game series that I love. I adore that game series. And while I'm reading this, I'm like, this feels like, Brother Francis, it feels like something, one of the side quests you would have had to do for this illumination, you would have had to do in something in Fallout. It really did have that feeling. And for sure, the Brotherhood of Steel was definitely inspired by the story. And I love that. Leibowitz, to me, really does feel kind of like a stand-in for Oppenheimer. You think about when this was written, the arms race was still very much on everyone's mind. We had saw what would happen with as we had reached the atomic age. And I think at this time period, you can look at several other writers. I've talked about Arthur C. Clarke, talked about Ray Bradbury, where it didn't seem like it was, if the bombs get dropped. It was just when. We were just all kind of waiting around until we were going to be destroyed by nuclear fire. And it's interesting to see that it was written at that time period, so the commentary is very obvious. But it was, at this time, it wasn't really speculative fiction. It was just like, this is what's going to happen. It really did feel like this. So I felt like it has some of that kind of peek into the future of where this author probably genuinely believed we were going to be not long away from when he was writing it. But it feels like dystopian, maybe some Middle Ages, and a science fiction novel kind of all wrapped into one, because you do have the three parts and there is time jumps in between each of them. And I didn't know that going in. I had no idea they were going to be dealing with three different time periods. But I think for the most part it works. Part one is amazing. Part one is everything that I look for in a post-apocalyptic setting. It just set the tone so right. You felt like you were there and you just kind of wanted to escape, but you couldn't stop turning the pages. But with this, I think playing with the way that you see how religion is going to persevere and maybe adapt to this time period, and how there are these cloistered monks that are trying to preserve these things for, the right reasons. At least you feel like that's the way it starts. And obviously it doesn't kind of continue to go that way. But I just like to ask those moral questions, and the biggest one being, are we doomed to repeat the same mistakes? I think this is very much a book that's going to make you think about those things and ask those questions to yourself. And is humanity just kind of like locked into like that cyclical nature where we're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes ever? I think those are very, very heavy themes. Before you even get into like church versus state and science and all that things, it's all in here. But that one for me is really, 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 really heavy, and it will make you start to actually think about some things in the best kind of ways, I think, because in the end, it is speculative fiction, and it will make you speculate on a few things. What makes it not so good? Now, I never like to use the word bad, but just for the sake of it, let's say there's some things that didn't work for me. They might not work for you. For me, part one was far and away the best part of the book. It was one of those where I was kind of worried. It kind of reminded me of The Passage, not in content, but the way that The Passage by Justin Cronin went, where like the beginning of the book was like amazing, and then about halfway through it just kind of fell off a cliff, and it changed everything. They changed characters, changed settings, changed time period, and I was never able to actually get into it. I was worried about that in part two, because part two, it's like, I feel like I'll look back on it and I'll feel differently, but while I was reading part two, it was starting to lose me a little bit. And thankfully, I'll say part three did bring it back around, and I was back in. I think I just didn't expect us to change everything, including the setting. I remember you can change some characters and stuff like that. That's fine. But when you completely change like the time period, that was a rough adjustment for me, and I didn't find it nearly as interesting as I did part one. So that kind of did bring me back a little bit. I thought, asking questions about like abandoning God for science and things. These are obviously questions. When you start doing man of faith versus man of science, that's going to be the beginning of the cyclical nature that I talked about. But personal, it was personal for me. I just feel like I want to spend more time discovering that wasteland. That's just something that I love. That's why I love those Fallout games so much, because you just get to discover a wasteland. And you think about, what did this all used to be? And you're finding these ancient relics, and you're just exploring that stuff. I love those ideas. You're finding this old Fallout bunker, wanting to know more about what happened to everybody that was inside it. Did they survive the blast? What does the skull mean? All those things. It's really, really, I love that stuff, and I felt like we got away from that in the last 2/3 of the book, because it did do very, very different things. So if you want a cheery book about humanity, this probably isn't it, because this does feel like one where the author does not feel very optimistic about the future of humanity. And, we're just going to be a blink of the lifespan of the earth if we don't destroy it first. It's definitely what it feels like. And again, it deals very much so with that cyclical nature of, are we doomed to repeat the same things over and over again? But guys, why should you read this book? Now look, this book, I think it's every bit as deserving of its legacy. I can see why this is considered a modern science fiction classic. It really is, or an all-time science fiction classic. It definitely feels like one, if I was remaking that dystopian list today, this would be on it for sure. I think if you're into the dystopian post-apocalyptic genre as a whole, it kind of feels mandatory. You need to read this. It feels like it would be like saying you love science fiction movies, but you never watch Star Wars. That's kind of what it feels like. It feels like one that you got to go back. I always encourage going back to the pillars and the foundation of a genre, and this definitely feels like one of the beginning of the post-apocalyptic. We're all going to drop the bombs during the arms race age. But if you want a kind of a post-apocalyptic tale that's going to ask you moral questions and make you think, I think this is definitely one that you're going to be looking for. And you prefer ideals and the doom of history, it's going to repeat itself no matter what we do. I think this will be something that clicks for you for sure. It definitely feels like something that and anyone that's into those things is going to like. But as for my final thoughts here, look, while I struggle with part two, upon reflection, it's one of those things where I think after some time goes by, I'll go back and I'll actually have a greater appreciation for part two, because I feel like the arrow is pointing up on it right now. Just while I was reading it, it was kind of rough, and it was partly because I thought I was staying in that one setting the whole time. I had no idea we were going to change up that much. But upon reflection, like I said, I think it's something I'll go back to and say, I understand what he was trying to do. It actually makes a lot of sense knowing now how it ends, how part 3 goes. So seeing what Miller was trying to do, what he was trying to say, has made the whole book seem a lot more full. It makes a sense, because before it just kind of felt like it was out of place. It didn't feel like it was the same story at all. But now that I see what he was getting at, I think I would take a different approach to it on this one. So if you can kind of go into it with an empty mind and just say, I'm going to go with this, and just say, hey, why don't you just show me where you're taking me, and I'm just along for the ride. I think that'll help a lot. But I'm really glad I read this, and I think it is every bit of deserving of its legacy. It does seem, I could see why this book is so beloved, why it's so hallowed, because it does seem like it was saying some things that it's very hard to deny. Yes, we haven't had the nuclear apocalypse yet, but it's one of those things where you never really ever feel like we're out of it for good. We haven't had a great dismantling of all these things. So it'll make you ask those questions. And though I would have preferred to stay in part 1 of this book a lot longer, I still feel like this is definitely a book that I'm going to recommend to anyone that's into classic sci-fi, that is into kind of understanding the post-apocalyptic genre and where it came from and how it's kind of evolved since then. This is one fun one to go back and look at and see what Mr. Miller Jr. was trying to say, because he has a lot to tell you. So guys, that was A Canticle for Leibowitz. I am so happy that you guys encouraged me to read this. Every comment I got in that dystopian video was about this book, and I'm glad that I did finally go ahead and do it. Thank you, Christopher, for encouraging me to do it. Thank you, Folio Society, for sending me this edition that made me want to read it even faster than I had planned to. I feel like my literary life is more complete now that I have this one checked off the list. Got lots of new sci-fi I'm exploring. I think I'm going to do Forever War by ℓ𝕠𝕠𝕜𝕤 next. That's the next one I feel like it's been really pushed on me a lot. But I'm very excited to continue dipping into some of these classic sci-fi stories, because I feel like they were taken at a different time period. Think about where we were in time. And I think that you always are kind of speculating on the future in that time period. And it's interesting to see where things did or did not end up, even if it is a commentary for something else. I think that's what makes the genre go around. So guys, A Canticle for Leibowitz. Have you read it? What did you think? Drop in the comments, guys, and let me know, and I will talk to you there.